What if I told you Warren Buffett has a private warning about Bitcoin that most investors completely ignore? He quietly revealed it to a handful of shareholders, but now it's out. If you own even a single fraction of Bitcoin, pay close attention. Understanding this could be the difference between massive gains or watching your money vanish in the next 2 years. Let's get straight into it. Warren Buffett has spent nearly a century mastering a game you were never meant to win. He turned a simple idea, trust the dollar, invest relentlessly, stay patient, into a fortune so large it defies imagination. 500,000% growth over 6 decades. Most people worship him for this, repeating his quotes like gospel, dreaming they can follow the same path. But there's a quiet part nobody talks about. It slipped out in a recent clip, an accidental confession that exposes exactly why this system works for him, but suffocates everyone else. You've heard Buffett dismiss Bitcoin as rat poison squared, right? He laughed at it for years. Yet here he is, on the edge of stepping away from Berkshire Hathaway forever, whispering a truth that Bitcoiners have screamed about since day one. He didn't mean to make your savings look like a joke, but he did. And once you hear how, you'll realize he's been telling you where the trap is all along, without giving you the map to escape it. Stay with me, because by the end of this you won't see your paycheck or your bank account the same way ever again. But first, we need to look at the man himself and the empire he built on a currency he never fully trusted. Picture this: a young Warren Buffett in Omaha, Nebraska, flipping through newspapers and memorizing stock prices while other kids played baseball. He didn't invent companies. He didn't code apps. He mastered one thing most people ignore: how to make fiat currency work harder than anyone else's. Over 70 years, he turned ordinary dollars into compounding machines, reinvesting dividends, buying undervalued businesses, and holding them through storms that would terrify the average investor. He calls it simple. He tells you anyone can do it, and in theory, he's right. But here's the detail most forget. Buffett never trusted the very dollars he worshipped. His entire empire sits on a single paranoia, that the dollar itself is a melting ice cube. So he stacked businesses, insurance floats, and mountains of cash reserves not because he adored green paper, but because he knew governments can't help but weaken it. That's the secret he's whispered in shareholder letters for decades, but almost nobody connects the dots. You might think, so what? He's rich. Why should I care? Because everything you earn, save, and plan for depends on the same dollar Buffett quietly fears. He built walls to protect his fortune from inflation and bad policy. Most people don't have that luxury. They trust banks, a paycheck, maybe a 401k. But when the currency rots, so does everything inside it. Buffett has played the game perfectly. But what happens to those of us who can't sit next to the printing press? That's where his recent confession hits harder than any Bitcoin debate. But before we unpack it, you need to hear exactly what he let slip, and why no one in the mainstream will repeat it word for word. In a shaky voice at 94, Buffett stood before his loyal shareholders and did something rare. He dropped the mask. Between jokes about America's greatness and nods to Berkshire's fortress balance sheet, he admitted what few billionaires dare say on record: that the dollar, the same dollar he multiplied endlessly, is doomed to lose value because governments are addicted to spending more than they earn. He didn't dress it up with academic jargon. He simply said, "We wouldn't want to hold anything in a currency that's going to hell." Think about that for a second. The Oracle of Omaha, who spent his life telling you to buy and hold, just confirmed that what you're holding is designed to shrink. And yet, right after exposing this flaw, he still mocks Bitcoin. Why? Because admitting the dollar's decay is one thing. Endorsing an escape route is another level of rebellion. It would mean betraying the very system that crowned him king. This wasn't the first time he hinted at this truth. His annual letters are peppered with quiet warnings about inflation eating purchasing power like termites in the foundation. But hearing him say it, on stage, with age making his words fragile yet painfully honest, hits differently. He knows the machine is unstoppable. He knows new politicians won't fix it. and he knows the average family doesn't have a fortress balance sheet to hide behind. But here's the twist most miss. He trusts his businesses more than any government. He always did. The question then becomes unavoidable. If Buffett no longer trusts the dollar alone, what chance do you have sitting on savings in a regular bank account? And if he won't buy Bitcoin to hedge this rot, who will? Hold that thought, because his hatred for Bitcoin reveals more about the trap than you might expect. And the contradiction is too big to ignore. Buffett's contempt for Bitcoin is legendary. He's called it everything from rat poison squared to a worthless gamble. His partner, Charlie Munger, went further, branding it as disgusting and contrary to the interests of civilization. And yet, with that single slip about weak currencies, Buffett accidentally validated Bitcoin's entire reason for existing. He confirmed what Bitcoiners have argued for years, that fiat money decays because humans can't resist printing more of it. This is where the paradox cuts deep. Buffett's life work depends on exploiting fiat decay better than anyone. He buys businesses that raise prices faster than inflation, he holds cash only when he expects bargains, and he maneuvers capital into hard assets when governments go on spending sprees. He's a master at staying a step ahead of the melt. Bitcoin, however, isn't about staying ahead. It's about opting out. And that, to Buffett, is treason against the very playground that made him untouchable. Imagine the coal tycoon who secretly knows fossil fuels poison the air, but calls renewable energy foolish because it undermines his empire. Buffett mocking Bitcoin while describing the dollar's slow death is the same contradiction. He sees the disease, he just refuses the cure. But what if that contradiction isn't ignorance? What if it's a final warning, spoken in code, for those willing to read between the lines? This conflict is why Bitcoiners replay that clip on repeat. It's not to gloat, it's to remind everyone that if the world's greatest fiat investor fears currency debasement, maybe the so-called rat poison is exactly the antidote for everyone who can't build an empire to outpace inflation. But this paradox alone isn't enough. To truly grasp why Buffett can win while you lose, you need to understand the real enemy, the silent tax that never asks permission. And it's worse than most people want to believe. Most people imagine inflation as prices rising harmlessly, a normal part of life, like seasons changing. Politicians soften it with phrases like targeted 2% or healthy economic growth. But behind that bland language lies a brutal truth Buffett hinted at, but never fully unpacked. Inflation is a tax you never voted for, siphoning value from your savings every single day. He called it out decades ago, writing, "Inflation acts as a gigantic corporate tapeworm." He wasn't exaggerating, he was confessing how he stays fat while everyone else gets drained. Picture this. You stash away $10,000 in a savings account, feeling safe, feeling responsible. A decade later, after official inflation, that money can buy far less. But the reality is worse because official numbers hide real cost of living spikes, rent, healthcare, college tuition, all outpacing your paycheck. Meanwhile, debts get easier to repay in cheaper dollars. That's not a bug, it's the point. The government inflates away its obligations, businesses raise prices to survive, and you get squeezed in the middle. Buffett survives this by owning cash flow machines, businesses that pass higher costs to customers and grow profits faster than the currency decays. For the rest of us, stuck in hourly wages or fixed salaries, there's no easy escape. You lose quietly, no riot, no headline, just a lifetime of working harder for dollars that buy less. And here's the twist. Buffett's confession means he knows this cycle can't be reversed by electing better leaders. The incentives are baked in, so when he says he wouldn't hold a currency going to hell, he's telling you that the dollar is on that path by design. But if inflation is theft and the system feeds on it, what can anyone do about it? The answer isn't in tweaking budgets or hoping for policy miracles. It lives in one brutal truth. You either learn to play the game like Buffett, or you step outside it altogether. And that's where Bitcoin enters as more than just an investment. It becomes a form of quiet resistance. But we're not there yet. First, see how the average person tries to play Buffett's game and why they almost always lose. Most people hear Buffett's advice and assume they can copy it. Buy stocks, hold them forever, ignore the noise. In theory, it sounds bulletproof. But here's the harsh reality. Buffett doesn't just buy stocks. He buys influence, cash flow, and negotiation power ordinary people never touch. He buys companies at a discount because sellers beg him to. He uses insurance floats, other people's money, to multiply bets without risking his own capital first. You can't do that with a Robinhood app and a few index funds. This is why the average middle-class investor never beats inflation like Buffett does. They stash savings in a bank paying near zero interest. They contribute to a 401k and pray markets don't crash right before retirement. And if something big hits, job loss, medical debt, divorce, their fragile empire crumbles overnight. They're playing the same board game, but with plastic pieces while Buffett moves gold ones. It's not incompetence, it's design. So what choice do you really have? One option is to hustle harder inside the same system. Get more degrees, more promotions, more side gigs. But the hamster wheel doesn't stop, it just spins faster. The other option is radical. Step outside the system's soft cage. That means building or owning assets the government can't dilute or seize at will. For centuries, gold served that role, but gold is heavy, hard to move and easy to regulate. Then came Bitcoin, digital, borderless, unconfiscatable by design. This is what Buffett can't publicly bless. His empire thrives on playing the dollar's decay to his advantage. But for millions without that leverage, staying inside the fiat game means surrendering decades of labor to a slow, invisible tax. And here's where most people hesitate. They know something's wrong, but they fear stepping into something new. They cling to the broken but familiar. Before we break down exactly how Bitcoin flips this script, you need to grasp one final layer. Why owning even a small piece shifts power back to you, and why it terrifies those who profit from your dependence. Keep that in mind, because next is where theory ends and real-world action begins. Bitcoin isn't magic. It won't make you rich overnight. It won't shield you from every mistake. But it does one thing no bank, stock, or fiat currency can. It removes middlemen from the money equation. For the first time in history, you can store value in a system where no government can quietly dilute it, no central banker can rewrite its supply, and no gatekeeper can freeze your account with a click. That's not theory. It's code. When Buffett admits the dollar will weaken because politicians can't resist printing, he's indirectly explaining why Bitcoin exists. It's an asset born from distrust, a blueprint for wealth that doesn't rot while you sleep. Think of it as digital real estate with one iron law. Only 21 million will ever exist. No committee meeting can change that. No election can override it. It's money governed by math, not men. This doesn't mean Bitcoin is invincible. Its price swings violently. Scams and hype circle it like vultures. But its core principle never changes. A store of value uncorrupted by human weakness. And that makes it threatening. Central banks can't control it. Politicians can't print it. Even billionaires can't bend it once it's in your private wallet. This is what terrifies those who profit from inflation and debt. Bitcoin hands you a key to step off the hamster wheel, even if just partially. Buffett will never endorse that escape hatch. He doesn't need to. He built his escape long ago using businesses and ownership stakes the average person can't replicate. But now, ordinary people have a tool to do, in a modern way, what Buffett did in an old-world system. Some dismiss this as digital speculation, but to those paying attention, it's the purest bet against the silent theft he just admitted exists. So the real question isn't whether Buffett likes Bitcoin, it's whether you understand why he doesn't want you to need it. Before you go all in, though, there's a smarter first step, something you can do within the next day that most people never bother trying. And that one small move might change how you see every paycheck you'll ever earn. But let's be practical. Here's how to begin without falling into the same traps that keep fiat prisoners chained forever. You don't need to become a full-time Bitcoin evangelist tomorrow. You don't even need to drain your savings and convert every dollar. The point is to break the habit of blind trust in a currency Buffett himself won't trust alone. Start smaller and smarter. First, look at how you hold cash today. How much sits idle in a bank account earning less than inflation eats away? Next, shift a fraction, even 1%, into Bitcoin. Not because it's a magic lottery ticket, but because it's a test. Watching how that small piece behaves over months forces you to study, to question, and to see the fiat system through new eyes. But don't stop at buying. Learn why Bitcoin was coded the way it was. Satoshi's white paper is free. Only 9 pages, yet 99% of people will never read it. They'd rather trust headlines than understand the blueprint. Spend 20 minutes this week reading it, then compare its logic to what Buffett just confessed about the dollar. The gap is so obvious you'll wonder why no economics teacher ever made you read both side by side. If you have debt, tighten it. If you depend on a single paycheck, explore other income streams. The goal isn't to become Buffett. It's to avoid being the one paying for his empire through silent currency decay. Remember, even a fortress like Berkshire Hathaway guards its treasure in assets, not in dollars collecting dust. Take that as a clue. And here's a challenge for today. Pick one person in your circle who still laughs at Bitcoin like Buffett does. Send them this video. Ask them if they think the dollar will get stronger or weaker in 10 years. Then watch what they say, and watch what they do. Because talk is cheap, but protecting your time and labor from theft is not. You can start now, with the next paycheck, the next dollar, the next decision. But there's one last piece you need to hear before we close this out. And it ties everything back to Buffett's final unspoken lesson. Look at Buffett one last time, not as the oracle, but as an old man who mastered a flawed system better than anyone ever did. He didn't rely on luck. He built walls so thick that even a crumbling currency couldn't break them. But in his final years, he slipped and told you the part no textbook covers. The dollar you work for every day is programmed to lose its power, no matter who runs the show. He never had to say the next line out loud. He doesn't have to, because deep down you know it now too. You can't repeat Buffett's path. The deals he made, the leverage he held, the insurance floats he rolled year after year, those aren't available to the average worker stuck between rent hikes and student loans. But you can break the cycle he exposed. You can choose not to hand over decades of labor to a system that silently drains you dry. This isn't about worshiping Bitcoin or demonizing fiat overnight. It's about seeing money for what it truly is. A tool, not a promise. Buffett's final confession proved the promise was always temporary. The tool you pick today decides who wins tomorrow. If you've listened this far, you're already ahead of most people sleepwalking through paychecks and inflation. Don't let that awareness fade when this video ends. Share this with someone who still believes the game is fair. Let them hear Buffett's quiet warning in his own words. Let them argue, doubt, or mock it. That's fine. Just don't let yourself be the one who heard the truth and did nothing. Because time is the one currency even Buffett couldn't buy back once it was gone. Protect yours better than he ever told you to. If you take nothing else from this, remember this single truth. Buffett built an empire inside a flawed system because he understood the flaw better than anyone. He didn't trust the dollar blindly. He used it strategically, converted it into real businesses, and sheltered his wealth where inflation couldn't silently steal it year after year. Most people don't get that chance. But today, you do have a choice he never publicly endorsed but secretly pointed you toward. Learn, question, and hold something that governments can't water down when the next crisis hits. It doesn't matter if you're starting with $10 or $10,000. What matters is that you start awake. You stayed until the end. That says more about you than about me or Buffett. Use that awareness. Reread this if you have to. Pass it on to one person who thinks saving alone will protect them. And above all, remember, Buffett mastered money, but you still control your time. Guard both with your eyes open.